Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the Intelligent Developers, led by Andre Bueno and Gerard Delade. The guest today is a good friend of mine, entrepreneur, developer, overall good guy, Shaun Belle. How are you, Shaun?
Fantastic. I can't complain. Who's going to listen to me?
Nobody. Nobody. Andre, how you doing, man?
I'm doing very, very well. I've been super excited for this conversation. I know Shaun has worked on a number of different kinds of projects. He's done some workforce, some mixed income, condos, lots of affordable projects, lots of PSH projects, from what I understand. Um, Very, very excited to jump into it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Shaun, tell us, how did you get started in the real estate business?
Well, it's a rather interesting story, and I'll start off by saying it was purely accidental, and I sort of backed into it, right? This is going back to the early '90s. I had been, running a restaurant in Brooklyn, and then also having a small consulting business. And a friend of mine asked me to speak with a board of a large nonprofit that did a lot of housing, a lot of real estate development and programming and so forth regarding, kind of their existing conditions, right? They were behind on their tax credit reports and a number of things. They were did not have a CFO in place. So I met with them, and I said, yeah, I can help you guys out. It should take me about 3 weeks. And 3 weeks became 13 years. My my first year there, so I was chief financial officer, ended up kind of, righting the ship financially, and then went from CFO to CEO, and started, doing a lot of development work for them and learning a lot about the development business and property management, but really all of it in the context of community development, right? So not just the real estate aspect, but like how do you empower families through home ownership, educational programs, GED training, computer training, after school programs, like all of these things. And that led me to thinking about, what do I do after this venture, if you will. So I started initially with my acquisition of a residential property out in New Jersey, with my partner at the time, and then we sort of begun looking at things inside New York City, some commercial property in the Bronx, and then we kind of by 2007 started our first ground up development project, which is a 63 unit, 63,000 square foot building, located in the Bronx, and that kind of jump started a lot of the ground up development activities as our first first foray into the development space.
Was this the condo project you did with the church?
No, this is a LIHTC project, a low income housing tax credit bond project, that we went into construction December 2007, and we're operational by December 2009. So that was a very good experience. Learned the ropes, really, being not just sort of a participant, but being sort of on the ownership side and having to put up the capital and other things to kind of make the transaction work. So it's a building that's still there that we're enjoying that process, and it's been really I think key in helping me understand a lot of how the nuances of the business itself.
So I'm
And
based in Los Angeles, and sorry, Gerard. Uh, I'm based in Los Angeles, and I just have to point out, I love the fact that one of your first projects was an 11-story project. Meanwhile, we drive around all of LA, and most people spend their entire careers never hitting over 7 stories. So that's amazing.
Yeah, I guess in in New York City, we think density, right? Because we have small sites, we don't have any, we can't go outwards, but we go up, and that's sort of the way things work. And if I had it my way, I'd go up even higher, right? But it is what it is.
So, entrepreneurs face, risk and uncertainties all the time. And you were talking in particular about in a major economic downturn. I guess what are some lessons you took from building in a, pretty deep economic downturn is we're looking at, some to some degree right now.
I think it's about, diversity is really key, right? In terms of thinking from an entrepreneurial standpoint, where, the bills never stop, right? No one ever says, don't send the bill because the economy is rocky, right? The bills keep coming. And we always have to figure out a way to kind of deal with those issues, right? So I think diversifying your business is important. So what we've done over the years is look at not only different types of real estate development, not just on the affordable side. Maybe we're looking at for sale product, mixed use products. So there's a diversity in terms of the types of deals, and because each of those different categories has its own nuances and flows differently, right? And then the other piece of it is thinking about things like property management and consulting services, and how to bring those things into your toolkit to kind of allow you to go through the ups and downs of each of the cycles, because it's all cyclical, right? We just kind of, we have these highs and we have these lows, and we're trying to always maintain ourselves somewhere in between there, in a way that allows us to continue, not only building our business, because we're in an extremely capital intensive business, but also, just doing the basic things like paying your staff, keeping the lights on, taking care of insurances and all of those kinds of things. So, it's really, I would say again, just kind of thinking about, your business, your revenue sources, and thinking about how to be creative and diverse in that flow.
Amazing, amazing. You've also done a number of faith-based development deals where you've had partnerships with faith-based organizations. Can you speak a little bit about kind of that line of business that you participate in?
Yeah, but I'll start off with just a very quick story, and I'll give you the sanitized version of it, right? So I had mentioned earlier that one of my first projects on the commercial side had been the acquisition of a commercial property, in the Bronx, and it was actually with the church that was in distress. So I was able to come in, save the property for them, partner with them. And then, there were some weird things happening internally at the church. And at the end of the day, I was like, this is my last church project. I'm never going to work with the church again. So I'm not sure what happened after that, but I think I'm now into like my 6th church project, and I've got like 3 more queued up in the pipeline. That relationship has been a really interesting one, because from my first experience, it was really, I was going to say, not just one teachable moment, but quite a few teachable moments, right? So we're able to kind of look at those types of transactions in terms of not just the dollar and cents, but really thinking about, how do we create a real partnership, and how do we really establish very clear lines from the start of the transaction. So in our church projects, it's an opportunity to, most of the time, save those churches, both in a physical way as well as a financial way. And then also, leverage the opportunity of being able to build some housing or some real estate in areas or on property that has been depressed, or maybe hasn't fully leveraged the value that's there. So we've been able to do partnerships where, we've rebuilt churches so they have a new sanctuary, new community facilities, and that sort of thing, and also create housing at the same location, and allow them to partner with us in a couple of ways. One, they own their own space outright and separate and apart from the residential component, but then also they're a part owner to a lesser percentage with us on the residential side of things. So we share in both the developer fees as well as the long-term revenue flow, which is something that sometimes not all churches think about the long-term revenue flow in the same way. So it's something that I strongly encourage. And my explanation of that is, or my philosophy around that sharing, if you will, or long-term thinking and planning, is that we can build you a new facility, right? But you've got to keep the lights on, you've got to pay insurance, you've got to do a whole host of things. Although there's no debt on it, you still have to maintain it, right? And obviously for many churches, these are challenging times in terms of the size of the congregations, which are shrinking, and then also the revenue or the tidings that come into the churches that allow them to conduct their programs and to meet their core mission. So it's important for us to kind of do things that allow for them to benefit in a very long-term way. So that's something that I'm a super advocate of it, even when it may not necessarily be something that some of our church partners think about initially, but it's something that we stress, or I stress, very, very intently. And most people end up agreeing with me, right? Because who's going to turn down an opportunity to kind of make sure there's some cash flow long term?
That's so interesting, because it sounds like you're playing this role where you're not only educating um, the faith-based entity, but at the same time, you're really having to think through about like what's in their best interest, and kind of get them to the point where they're going to be working with you on the stage.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And part of it has really been, we've heard a lot of horror stories about, developers that, get engaged with faith-based entities and things go bad. And some of it, it's obviously people trying to take advantage of churches and so forth, but some of it is also sometimes a lot of miscommunication, and also a lack of understanding around the complexity of these transactions. So, I always felt it was important to educate, our partners on all aspects of the transaction, right? So that they're not only learning the process, but they're actually engaged in the process. So, they're at all the meetings, they're at all the design sessions, they are, responsible, for engaging with the architect around their particular space, and just really understanding all of those processes, and really creating an open book that we can have a conversation about when things are going right and when things are maybe not going so right, and why these things happen. Because, for folks who are outside of the development world, if you will, it's very difficult for them to understand, kind of the ebbs and flow of the business, right? Why does a project take, 5 years when another project took 3 years? Like what are those things that occur? Everything from understanding, when you start out with a particular budget number and that number changes, why was that change? So really being transparent, and at the same time being informative about the process and the solutions, and then also really establishing a relationship that's a true partnership. It's been really a focal point of our relationship with all these faith-based entities, and we're and I guess I would say we're agnostic from the standpoint of we'll work with any kind of faith-based entity. So we've had conversations with with Muslim groups, organizations, and we'll work with anyone that wants to wants to work, and sort of has the mindset of really providing added value to their particular community.
That's really fascinating, because it sounds like entrepreneurially you've had to like jump into a lot of these different conversations, and even the different product types you've really tackled right over your career. They've been reflective of that. I guess kind of switching gears a little bit, but still on the subject, the project that you're working on in North Carolina, that seems to be, it looks like it's an adaptive reuse it's a commercial property. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a commercial property. We've it's been a bit of a challenge. We've hit a couple of snags on it, so we're kind of working through some items to see where we ultimately end up with that. It's been some complexities on adaptive reuse, but it's we're working on something else that's actually just as interesting. But the adaptive reuse, what we've learned is really thinking about the complexities of not only the working with an established building and established restrictions within that building, but also thinking about the impact that the re-envisioned use of that property will bring to the community. So yeah, we're excited about these opportunities.
So I know we skipped a step. A good number of our guests have been HBCU grads. You graduated from HBCU as well, right, Shaun?
Yeah, there's only one that I know of that. So I'm just kidding, folks. Just kidding. Yeah, I'm a Howard alum. So go Bison.
How do you think that HBCU experience kind of set the foundation for your professional career?
I'll be honest. The experience has been transformative, not just on a professional side, but also on a personal side. Right. I came to this country from Guyana when I was about 10 years old, raised in Brooklyn. Got down to Howard, had never seen that many people of color in one place, and folks who were very diverse in terms of where they came from, different socioeconomic standards. I met people who said to me, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to med school. Both my parents are doctors." Now, I'm from Flatbush, Brooklyn. I'm like, what?
What?
I'm seeing kids pull up in BMWs and things that I couldn't imagine that world. So from that perspective, it allowed me to understand one thing, that there are many folks of color who have attained a lot of things, both educationally and financially, and so forth and so on. And there's a world out there where you can participate just being based on your merits and your character, and not having to worry about whether someone is treating you a particular way because of your color, right? So I think the HBCU experience allows you to dream, right? Like no one's ever going to tell you at an HBCU you can't be a doctor, you can't be a scientist, you can't no one ever tells you that that's impossible, right? Everyone is focused on, yeah, it's possible, and yeah, go do your thing. As a matter of fact, it's sort of like, oh, that's great, we're doing the same thing too, no big deal, right? So and I'll share with you guys that leaving high school, I had two conversations, and both of them were basically the same conversation. I went to a guidance counselor and said, "Oh, I would like to go to college," because it was time to kind of start looking at colleges and so forth. And that guidance counselor said to me, "Well, what do you want to do that for?"
Wow.
And it wasn't. She wasn't the only person who said that to me. There was a coach that I had that pretty much said the same thing to me. And I guess thinking about it now, I don't know necessarily if it was just them saying, or trying to elicit more of a conversation from me, but I certainly took it in terms of like, how dare you think about that,
Right.
So going to Howard as an example just really opened up the world. And then on the professional side, really building the relationships, and then understanding that, that we have a lot to offer. And I've had the opportunity to also attend various educational programs at Harvard and Columbia and so forth. But there is a difference where you can walk into a room and you're not worried about who's looking at you. right? You're not worried about, you know, where you're coming from and where they're coming from, and if there is a disconnect between the two of you, right? So I think the value of an HBCU is tremendous, and I would just say, sort of a final note on that is, it allows you to operate with a lot less baggage that we would typically perhaps feel or carry as we navigate in other arenas that are not, maybe predominantly, where the vision and the experiences are not predominantly shared by the group itself.
Um, yeah, I reflected on this a couple years ago, Shaun. So I went to FAMU, of course, and I was talking to one of my classmates, and it was like 20 years since our freshman year, and I was saying to him that I never really realized it, but my dad went to an HBCU, and I grew up seeing my dad and his fraternity brothers. And it was very normal for me as a child to see a Black lawyer, a Black doctor, a Black professional. And now I reflect and I'm like, yeah, those are who my friends are today. That I grew up seeing that. And, I'm sure that's a factor in the equation, how I've kind of continued in my journey in life. That's normal to me. That not only seeing them, and as you mentioned, professionally and personally, but seeing them outside of their job as regular people having a good time, you know, being friends and having that balance of like being a whole person, that I got to see that at a young age. And now as an adult, I'm like, oh, like, okay, I should do that for my children too, to see that, oh, this is normal, right? Shaun is a regular person. Andre is a regular person. That you can achieve great things in life or whatever you want to do. And, have a balance and be a good person.
Yeah, and I think that exposure, if for nothing else, is perhaps, the best education, right? Because for me, those types of things have been kind of markers in my life as I think about, things that I'm working on, and being able to think, really big about things and not having any limitations on what I think I could do. And just, and again, just reflecting on, my college experience as an example, going to folks, going home with some of my friends for the holidays, where they may be from Los Angeles, and pulling up, and they have this huge house overlooking the valley, and I'm like, well, what is this? Oh, you mean this is possible for me? And just understanding that, and not really at the time, not really kind of getting all the pieces, but it became ingrained in me, like, these things are possible, right? So
Yes.
to your point, if you're exposed to lawyers and doctors, and these are just average folks, who, look like you, sound like you, do things similar to you, and just that exposure, I think, is very, very, very helpful. And then it allows you to really understand that you really have no limitations, right? We know that there are challenges, both um, systemically, and there are all kinds of challenges that we face in life, but we know that we can overcome those things, and it's not really anything that we should spend too much time focused on, because there have been a lot of folks who have sacrificed to show us those examples, and and I really appreciate that, and that's been very, very useful for me.
I appreciate you sharing that, because a lot of what we really preach really on our podcast is about trying to surround ourselves with individuals who are you know doing things in a way that really position us for really what we're looking to achieve. So we're trying to talk with as many developers as possible, so that we're exposing our audience to individuals such as yourself that have gone out and like really done it. But then the question always comes to, I guess kind of back to you, like, how do you surround yourself with great mentors that are pushing you forward?
It's interesting. I don't think about it in a formalized way. Like some folks will say to me, "Oh, I have a mentor. I'm meeting with that person next week," and there's like an organized way. I haven't really had that in the same sense, But what I have had is a lot of people who, when they speak to me, I kind of really soak up what they're saying, right? And they may or may not be specifically in the same business, right? Or they may be in a different part of the business. And the other thing I found to be interesting is those individuals go from literally, a guy who, doesn't have a formal education or formal training in real estate that's been able to amass, tens of millions of dollars in real estate, to someone that's super sophisticated and has worked at all the Wall Street banks and is doing, wonderful things on the real estate side, and everyone in between there. So it's been, surrounding myself in sort of a very seamless way, but really listening to what people say, because I think there's value in whatever, there's value in everything that folks have to say, right? But it's, and really then asking questions and seeking out assistance and raising your hand when you don't understand something, right? Or you don't know something. So not just simply saying, I'm the smartest guy around, I know what I'm doing. I mean, I guess if we were all the smartest guys in the world, I don't know, by now someone would have figured out who we are, right? And and maybe I'd have my own podcast entitled "The Smartest Guy in the World." I don't know. But I'm pretty sure I'm not. So it's really surrounding yourself with people that you can trust, people that you respect, regardless of whether or not they're specifically in your field, because there are lessons to be learned no matter where someone is coming from, right? And I've also learned, and I'll just share a very quick story. A very good friend of mine, years ago, he said to me, if you ever need anything, give me a call. And at first, he was an older guy. So, I guess he's a mentor in that sense. And, not a highly educated individual, but very smart. And he'll tell you, hey, I'm not the smartest guy, but he's done some things and just based on common sense. I mean, this guy's one of the sharpest people I know, which, as you guys know, in the business world, there are a lot of smart people, but maybe not all of them have a lot of common sense, right? Or take a common sense approach. So he said to me one day, you need anything, give me a call. I did need something. I gave him a call. I needed some capital I was raising. And he said to me, oh, come by the house tomorrow and pick up the check. And we're not talking about a small check, right? So I say all that to say that, you never know where someone is coming from. You never really know what resources they have, and you never really know what value they may bring to you. So it's important not to dismiss people. It's important to embrace folks from the standpoint of learning who they are and what they're interested in doing. And then if there's a way for you to work together, then, that you should pursue. But none of this work gets done. And Gerard, this, none of this work gets done without partnerships, right?
Right.
So, we don't, and I say to our team that, listen, when you move a project through the pipeline and you get to the closing table, there are literally probably 20 people there, right? There's, all the attorneys, tax credit folks. It's like all of these people to do this one thing. So it's clearly not done in a vacuum, right? We're not doing all of this work simply by ourselves. We have to develop partnerships in all aspects of it. So
Fantastic. So Shaun, tell me, if you could talk to 21-year-old, just graduated from Howard, Shaun, what advice would you give that young man today?
get your I forgot. I don't want to get, I was about to say something. Get your stuff together. No, on a serious note, so I had a very interesting experience, right? So, it took me a while to get through college because I basically, paid the freight myself. So I started my first business in college, right? And just kind of always been entrepreneurial. And then anytime I had a job, right, the job was just the placeholder to fund whatever it is I wanted to do. Right. So, and sometimes I had, 2 or 3 jobs going on at the same time, but it was always kind of like with this, oh, I'm going to do this. So let me just get all my stuff together. So speaking to my 21-year-old self, one thing that I would say is, one, focus on credit, right? The importance of that, both from a personal standpoint and then also to build towards your business on the business side. Think about relationships in terms of access to capital and speaking to people who, who are outside of your world, right? And really, explain to them what you're trying to do, what your vision is, because a lot of those people will be aligned with you, right? But if they never hear your vision, they can't really help you. So really speaking to that. And then probably the most important thing I live by is I have a saying, which is I wasn't born with a silver spoon. I was born with a plastic spoon, right? So that means to me that I'm never afraid to kind of take that chance, right? Because what's the worst case scenario? I'm going to end up back with my plastic spoon, right? So I don't see like I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to, just lose this great thing that I've had in terms of, business or anything like that. So to my younger self, I would say go even harder, right? Take even more risk, go for it, right? While you have the energy, while you don't have as many constraints, both time and other responsibilities, but really push the boundaries, think about your dreams, and then think about things kind of in a long-term way. Because at 21, as as you posed in the question, Gerard, at 21, we're thinking, oh,
I got plenty of time.
I got lots of time. And quickly 21 becomes 30, and 30 becomes 40, and 40 becomes 50, and then we'll keep going from there, right? So I think it's important to kind of push the boundaries and go very hard. I mean, if you need to sleep 5 hours a day to kind of make that dream come through, then that's what you do, right? And if you're and just using 21 as an example, if you're that age without a lot of core responsibilities, then you should devote all of your energies to making your dream come true.
Fantastic. And we will end it there. Shaun, thank you, man. We really appreciate you coming in today.
My pleasure. Thank you guys very much.
All right.
Yeah.
Till next time.
All right. Take care.